You can't be serious, man. You cannot be serious!
Well, I was about to introduce our person we're about to speak to, Don, and it said it was about the author. I thought it was on the back of his book. Show me where that is, please.
About the author?
I was going to read out who we're speaking to. That's it. I was looked on the back flap, and I thought, so this is who we're about to speak to, Don.
You should be able to do this off the top of your head without reading. Do you want me to do it?
This man was at Newlands. The Black Saturday David Warner triggered Australia's cricket man's most shameful scandal. He was in Birmingham just days after the combustible bad boy punched England's Joe Root in a Broad Street bar. He was also in Melbourne for Warner's big on-field moments, including, and then he gives them all. He is one of the foremost authorities in Australian cricket, having witnessed his first Test 60 years ago and written, edited and ghosted 67 books on cricket. He has also written 20 AFL books and one on the war. There is one on the war. I don't know which
war.
Well, we can ask him when I introduce him. Which war? There is no more published sports author in the country than the man who is sitting opposite you, Don, and you, Ivan, and he is the great Ken Piesse.
He'll tell you great.
He is the great, don't talk down the people before we introduce them. He is the great Ken Piesse. Welcome to You Cannot Be Serious, Ken.
My pleasure, Sam. G'day, everyone.
The Boer War, Ken?
World War II.
Crimean War.
My old man was a commando, and the Japanese, Singapore had fallen, and the Japs were coming north. Darwin was being bombed every second day. The Japanese, they were doing all sorts of hit and runs. So the Australians fought back. There were 200 Australians in Timor, but they were so successful.
We've gone from Timor to Singapore to Darwin.
Yeah,
Don, because it was all part of the war, Don, please. And seriously, mate.
The Japanese thought there was 2,000 Australians there, and there was 200. My dad was one of those 200. He was 19 years old out of Scotch College.
Melbourne?
Scotch College in Melbourne, yeah.
Did they...
Fighting hard and doing a very good job.
Because they thought there were 2,000, was this the Americans that did this? They had blow-up tanks and blow-up guns that... They had plastic blow-up tanks that looked as though when they were inflatables, so that when the planes went over, they thought, shit, there's 1,000 tanks here, and they only had about 10.
Yeah, but Mr. Piesse was fighting like 100 men. There was only one of him.
He
made up 100.
They got jumped at dawn one day, and they fought off the Japanese, and his feet were tied. About lunchtime, he thought, and he put on his left boot onto his right foot, and vice versa, because they got jumped, and it was pitch black.
So the reason, Ken, that we got you in here today is because you have a new book out called The Bull about David Warner, Daring to Be Different, and you sent it to me, and I thought, I've looked at the chapters in it, and I'm going to say now I haven't read it because I thought the questions I would ask you would not necessarily be relevant to the book, because what's the point of you explaining all the book if we do an interview about it and people don't have to go out and buy it? So this is indirectly we're going to interview you about the book, but I want to first ask you, you've written 60 or 70 books on AFL and cricket. Do you vicariously live your life through the people that you write about?
I wasn't good enough to play league football.
So that's a reasonable question, which is not meant to be a derogatory question, but you get a kick out of writing about people that you admire.
Yep. I reckon that's true. I used to go and watch Hawthorn and Donald play. I saw Donald out-sprint Sam Kekovich at Glenferrie Oval one day, and he told me years later that was the moment when he stood up and realised that he could actually compete. I like delving behind the stories and interviewing all sorts of people. And from cricket point of view, Bill Ponsford, born 1900, Don Bradman, born 1908, all the way through, all the big names. I'll go across to Tassie for Christmas. I'll go and see Doc Baldock and Royce Hart down at South Arm. I really love the sports stories and coming around to your joint, Sam, and doing some of your favourite yarns. I like talking about Bobby Davis, the kookaburra. all
Ali
the
Kappas,
greats.
yep. So okay. So who do you decide? So how did you decide to write? This is your 70th book, is it, on cricket?
No,
80.
67th book on cricket.
67.
Yeah,
All right.
yeah,
Sorry.
yeah.
David Warner, The Bull, is just 60. How do you decide? Who do you decide to write a book on? And do you try and churn out one every year? And then who do you decide to write one on? What, Don?
Jesus, it's more than one a year.
No, it's probably about that.
Well, you were a journo until you're about 40.
Yep.
Sorry to be inaccurate, Don. About it was
So
just a
that's in
throwaway
about 30
line.
odd years, you've written 87 books.
Yeah, I've done all right. So this is a Wilkinson Books one, and Michael Wilkinson,
Yeah,
the
I know
publisher,
Michael.
rang me and said, he's just made 200, can you write his life story? And I said, I'd like to speak to him and see if he can contribute. His manager, these days you have to deal with managers, wouldn't let me near him.
David Warner's manager.
Correct.
Yep.
And so...
Which is whom? Who?
Not even worthwhile to name. So a little bit like years ago, Sam, I remember doing the Gary Ablett unauthorised biography, and we were publicising it 3AW, and it was a bit of a witch hunt on me on why would you write about Ablett when he doesn't want you to. The book was better because I did 60 interviews from Malcolm Blight to Gary Ayres to Ron Hovey, all the Geelong greats, and Gary Ablett rang me up on the Friday night before his printing and said, Ken, I might like to be involved, but the book was better without him. And it's the same with Warner, because by me not being able to talk directly to Warner, other than the press conference I've been with him, the story is told through the eyes of other people, so it's lovely.
That was that was the very next question I was going to ask you. Do you? So you decide to write on them, whether the people want you to write on them or not. It's a biography, of course.
Not a biography.
Yeah, this is a classic biography from day one. I've got him.
What did you say, Don?
Going up in Matraville, etc.
What did you say, Don?
But a biography is he telling his own
No, that's
story.
an autobiography.
That's auto. That's auto.
Sorry.
So David's going to do his...
shit.
And one of the reasons why the manager didn't want my book to come out was that David Warner, once he retires from Test cricket in January, he'll write his own book, which is an autobiography. So mine's a biography. Yep. And it's been a lot of fun to do.
Jesus Christ, if you touch that fucking thing again, stop it! I'm serious. Fuck you. God almighty.
Come on, get on with the interview.
I can't do it. If you could fucking do something properly for once in your fucking life, don't touch the microphone and speak into it and stop eating. Fuck. Go out. Go home. Now, Ken, could I ask you this? Oh, Jesus, goes on. Good, fuck off. Ken, do you get any blowback? Do you ever get any blowback from the people you interviewed? I know Gary said he'd like to be part of it. Have you ever got into trouble? Do they ever get complaints from the people you speak to?
No, because I suppose I've got a very good name in footy and cricket. And so there's only a few over the years. Renee Kink at the Sunday Observer didn't like me always referring to his 5 losing grand finals. The cricketers are pretty good. They know that I've been a good player without reaching the very top. I know the game intimately, and I've been writing the game since I was 17 years old at the age.
I've got a good idea for another book. You should write a book on Don Scott and people he knows and people he pisses off. I reckon that would sell fucking 1 million copies, because that is about the most annoying person I've ever fucking met. He's dismantled 2 microphones, he's broken 2 sets of headphones, he's eaten, he's fucking can't pronounce a word properly, and he's gone. I'm sorry about that, but it's bliss. It's suddenly become bliss. Now, do you try and write for the purists, the people you write about, or it has to be a mix of salacious dirt and gossip? Or do you try and steer away from that? You're not shell shocked by anything you do? You're not restricted, or do you just try and tell it as it is, Ken?
This was totally unrestricted because Warner didn't have an influence on the end product. I like to tell stories, Sam, so I'll talk about how you've played 300 plus games in white boots, but then I want to know where you came from and some of the influences, and I'll ask about Polly Farmer and what did he directly help you with. So it's the same with the cricketers. And so I've been working for P&O on cruise ships, telling footy and cricket anecdotes and stories, Sammy.
Really?
Yeah, so we have a lot of fun.
So you're a raconteur.
I like telling stories. So, for example, Bobby Davis, my favourite. Every time I'd come to Geelong, I'd go down to Newtown, Margaret would make a cup of tea, and away we'd go. And his favourite, and I tell it on board the cruise ships, was when the great Graham Farmer was recruited to Geelong. And they're sitting in the Moorabool Street office. Of course, those days, you just had the footy ground. You had no extra staff or anything. He's sitting with Leo O'Brien. This is in 1961. Polly Farmer's just won the Man of the All-Australian champion. Okay, Leo, what do we need? We've got a good side here. We've got Wade coming at full forward. Young Sam Newman coming through the ranks. We need a ruckman, don't we, to finish us off? Yes, we do. Who are the best two? Well, there's Graham Farmer in Perth, Bobby, and there's the fella in Adelaide, Neil Curley. Oh, okay. All right. Ring Perth. I haven't got his number, but just ring the Perth Exchange. They'll put you through, and within 5 minutes, Graham Polly Farmer has rang up. Oh, it's Graham Farmer here, Bobby.
Really?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And he was saying, Bobby, who's, as you know, talks like a kookaburra, I want you to come and play with us. The best team, we're going to win premiership after premiership with you, Graham. We're going to win, Paul. We're going to win it. He said, oh, well, I'd really like to, but I'm really committed here in Western Australia. And as you know, I've got a really nice situation. Well, what about, we've got a trip away going up to the Gold Coast next week. Would you like to come? Oh, that'd be very nice indeed. Yeah. And so Graham Polly Farmer came on the trip away, and on the last day, he really liked it for 5 days of whining and dining. And, well, what do you think of us, Paul? What do you think? Well, yeah, I'm really thinking about it. Well, but of course, Bob, I'm going to need a job. I'm going to need a
and you
salary.
know what they gave him to get him over? £2,000.
Yeah, which is a lot. Huge money.
£2,000 in 1963.
Huge money. Huge money. I'm going to need a car. I'm going to need somewhere to live. And of course, he came, and maybe the Cats would have won the 62 flag if he hadn't broken down after 11 games. But of course, 63 probably should have won 67 as well. But it was just amazing how Bobby was a star All-Australian football himself, but he got more enjoyment out of going up to all sorts of places, Tullybuck to see Shatter, John Sharrock, and on the way through they went to Horsham, and the kid he was kicking with wasn't that much good, but there was a big fat kid bouncing the ball and kicking these huge torpedoes at Horsham. Oh, who's that? Oh, a kid called Wade. He's only 17 or 18. He's pretty lazy. Don't think he'll be much good. Oh, yeah. And so by the time 18-year-old Doug Wade had walked around the street from the ground to Mackenzie Street, Bobby was already on to his second party pie. And Mrs. Wade said, would you like another drink? Wouldn't mind if I do. And so, of course, they ended up signing Doug Wade, who ended up kicking more than 1,000 goals for the Cats, being one of the icons. So some of my favourites.
I should know this. Did you write a book on Farmer?
No.
Did you write? How do you decide who do you write books on? So you decided to write one on, and I know. You just mentioned his name, the publisher.
Michael Wilkinson.
I know Michael. Michael asks me, could he write a book?
Yeah.
Could I write a book? And I get on well with Michael. But so you decide. Why did you decide? Because he said he just made 200 or something. Did you?
He made a double century at Christmas,
and that would be enough to cobble together a book.
Well,
I'm sure, and I've seen all the chapters. How do you decide in chronological order of someone's career? Do you do that, or do you go bang with a bit of salacious stuff to start with to get people's attention?
So we've hit Cape Town.
The art of doing it.
So I was president of the Australian Cricket Society up until last year for about almost 20 years, Sam. So we'd take tour groups away, Susan and I. And we were in Cape Town on the very day where the Australians misbehaved. They cheated, and then they came to the press conference later and they told lies. Smith and Bancroft, who were we didn't even know Warner was involved at that stage. But then 24 hours later, he'd been sacked, Smith had been sacked, and Bancroft was about, and they're all heading home. So it was the greatest cricket scandal that had been in mid-test. And the Australians went out there on the last day and they were blown away. Tim Payne was acting captain.
Yep.
He became the full-time captain after that. So we happened to be in the right place at the right time for that particular story. So I knew a heap of background on Warner as a maverick young player. Like years ago down at Frankston, where I live, he was a young star for the under-17s, but he was wild. He was a real maverick. He didn't get on with too many others, but except his mates. He was a great team player, terrific team player, and he could play out of his skin. So if you were the fastest bowler in the world, Sam, David Warner would take you on and try and hit you for 6 and then laugh in your face and said, is that the best you can do?
So he's a good sledger, a good competitor, a good...
Yes, absolutely he is.
He tried to get the better of you mentally?
Yeah.
So, so do you admire him, or do you admire the way he plays, or that doesn't come into the equation? You just like to write about controversial figures?
No, I hated him after Cape Town, like all the purists.
It's just the sandpapering the ball.
Yeah. Like, it was deliberate cheating, but as I said, it was exacerbated by the cheating that Smith said that they just picked up a stray bit of paper on the side of the pitch.
But they would say that, though, wouldn't they?
Well, they would, but he shouldn't have even appeared, and the girl, they shouldn't have even done the conference that night because it was just fuel.
They'd been caught
red-handed. Red-handed.
So they should have just...
It was all over the
it.
huge video screens everywhere. It looked so bad.
So is this the first time that... Didn't they used to use Vaseline to shine up one side of the ball, and hairspray and sweat and Hansi Cronje? Holy mackerel!
Yeah.
Was it a
Sold
huge scandal, or was it just blown out of all proportion?
It was our biggest scandal, our Australian cricket's
I know
biggest
it was,
scandal.
but
and Warner was up front and centre, and he was the man in it. But as his mates explained to me, they said nobody else in that team was gutsy enough, was brave enough to do what David said. Cut out a little bit of... Because they all carry sandpaper for their bats. So they can hide all the edges and the red marks on the edges.
Oh, do they?
And so he cut out this... It was just all premeditated. We're not spare at the moment. And by being cheats, we don't mind... Australians don't mind losing, Sam, but let's have a go down and have a good time and try as hard as we can. Let's not cheat. Let's not go beyond the rules. They did. Cricket is that sort of game.
Yeah, there's surely who bought the Lily bought the aluminium bat out one day. Is that
you did
just to stick it up the establishment? Is that cheating?
No.
Well, why? It
was marketing. He was marketing his combat
bat.
That's right.
Yeah.
He used it in Brisbane, didn't score any runs, and he used it in Perth.
Yeah.
And Mike Brearley reckons that the ball was being knocked out of shape by Dennis Lilly.
That's right.
And so Lilly, being the great theatrical man, threw the bat. And Rodney Hogg, 12th man, ran out with some others. A wooden bat. Greg Chappell said, give him out a bat. And Lilly looked at each of the bats and then threw those as well. Said, then he came back with the combat bat. Mike Brearley ended up signing the bat. Good luck with the sales, Dennis. Regards, Mike Brearley.
So when you get set on speaking to someone, do you then delve into second-party gossip and third parties? Do you go down the line to all their friends, or make a point of asking people who might have a different slant on the person you're interviewing, and do you get knocked back, or do they tell you to mind your own business, or is it traumatic doing it in some cases?
It's not traumatic. I like making a sentence sing years ago at The Age. We all had typewriters, Sam, and there's a guy called Paul Heinrichs, who was a very good general reporter, and he was banging out a story and he was smiling. And I just joined The Age on the Sporting Star 75. You were wearing the white boots, and I thought, wow, if I could get that much enjoyment out of my job with this boy really loving what he was doing. Yeah. So it's intriguing. Like, I like getting to the stories behind the stories and asking why, and then asking them about a couple of their favourite moments.
So it's a labour of love, mate. I mean,
it is. You don't make a lot of money on books, but I've had a lot of practice at it.
So just to do the research must be extraordinarily time-consuming. Because you would have pride in what you do, so you don't just bang them out and put it together and market them. You like it to be a professional edition, and people enjoy it. Do you get feedback from the listeners, from the readers?
Yeah,
From the publishers?
Yeah,
Which
sure.
has been your most successful biography? Yeah, they're all biographies, of course, aren't they?
Most of them.
What do you mean most of them?
Well, I do favourite footy yarns. I do favourite cricket
Oh, yes,
yarns.
I'm sorry. Yep,
So Gary Ablett, the unauthorised biography, has been the best. That went to a couple of editions and might have been 30,000 copies. But, for example, like with the P&O stuff, I'll start I'm laughing and end I'm laughing. So Dean Jones was a mate of mine for years and years. He was playing golf with Don Bradman one day, and Don, age 70, and Dino around about 25, 26, striking the ball like Tiger Woods, just hitting it a country mile. Get to the 16th, and Don was just hitting his 4 irons and chipping it on. And Dino's won the last hole, and so it's all square. The game at Kooyonga, Don's club, coming to the 18th hole. And Dino's ready, got his 4 iron out, a big dog leg left, heavily wooded on the left-hand side, just a short par 4. And so Dino's going to hit his 4 iron, same as Don, and then the battle of the chips. And he's just winding up with a 4 iron. You know, Sonny, Don Bradman had this little squeaky voice, Sam. You know, Sonny, when I was your age, I used to hit it over that tree there, straight onto the green. Did you, Don? Okay, so he gets out his driver and he swung like Tiger Woods and he really creamed it, hit it right in the middle, and it's going up. It's going up. It's going up. Almost gets over, just hits the very top branch of the big eucalypt on the left, bordering the green. Drops down out of bounds. Don hits his 4 iron, chips on. Of course, Sonny wins the hole. Of course, Sonny, when I was your age, that tree, it was only this high.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, that's fantastic.
So I like telling those stories, Sammy. Yeah.
So do you ever, when someone realises that you're about to write a book about them, or do you ever get... do you ever get intimidated or threatened? Don't write a book about me. Have you ever had people say, "Mate, don't write a book about me," or do you? That's never happened.
Well, Warner's coach, his batting coach, a long-time coach, ever since he was 19 or 20, and he said to me, "Well, David has told me that he didn't really want me to talk to you, but I respect you, Ken. You ask me some questions, I'll do my best to answer." And he was fantastic. He was fantastic. Like in the last tour of England, Warner played his natural game. He got 3 half centuries, did pretty well, got 280 runs in an Ashes series, averaged under 30, so still not a superstar. But the previous time, he wanted to be the team player, and Justin Langer said to him, "I want you to defend. I want you to play not your natural game, defend and stick around and try and use up some overs, make it easier for Smith and Labuschagne, who was just coming through." This is 2019. And Woodall was, his coach was just amazed by this. He said, always you have to let David see ball, hit ball, and throw the arms at him and just let him play his game. And we saw, with this World Cup that he's going to be a star there because he's just playing his natural game. He's so instinctive, and that's what you want to be. So the batting coach was fantastic. And leading into the 200, last Christmas at the MCG, he did a private session with Warner under Andrew McDonald, the new coach. And he said, "I can't see anything wrong at all. Okay, you've missed out here and there. I can see a big score around the corner." And he made 200.
Has Warner, he's seen the book and he's commented on it, or hasn't he done that yet? How long's this been out?
It's only been out a month, and so he's overseas in India right now.
Would you have sent him a copy?
Yeah, absolutely.
And has he got back to you and
No,
said,
no, hasn't yet, but I'm sure he will. And
are you sure he will?
Yeah, well, basically what's in there is pretty good. He was an animal as a younger man, totally out of control, especially after 5 o'clock. No doubt about that. But he met Candice. They met dating on social media.
I actually read that chapter in the book.
Yeah.
Because I was interested as to how he met her.
Yeah. And so and they got on so well that he invited her to come over for the test matches, last 2 test matches, and she did. And she stayed with him straight away. Yeah. First time they'd met actually physically.
And was there some pushback from the cricket authorities that, or was it okay to take your girlfriends and wives on the tour, or
in the old days,
did you have to get permission to do that?
Up until a dozen years ago, even the first 6 weeks of the tour under Alan Border, the girls weren't allowed anywhere they anywhere near, not in the hotel, not even in the bar downstairs at the start of the tour.
This is girlfriends or this
This
is
is
wives
girlfriends
as well?
and wives. They had to do B&Bs elsewhere. And so Merv Hughes and Morney, for example, with the lovely Simone, they had to go offshore, away from the hotel, to be able to meet up with their special people.
And of course,
That's all changed now, though.
Yes, and of course in Richie Benno and Bill Laurie's day, they used to go over on the ship.
Yeah,
They used to
exactly
get-
that.
That's right.
Yeah. One of my old mates, Len Darling, from years and years ago, said those ship cruises, he said it was like New Year's Eve every night for 6 weeks, every night. It was just huge, huge.
You mentioned Shane Warne. Is he the most enigmatic? Is he the most? He was. I kept saying that if they ever played cricket in America, he'd be as big a pop star as any singer, entertainer. He had incredible magnetism, didn't he? Did you ever? I should know this, Ken, but I should have looked at all the books. You didn't write a book on Shane. You did?
Yeah. And Shane,
Was he okay with that?
Yeah. He's written. I wrote 3 books on Shane,
Did you?
including.
I'm sorry, I should have known
including a biography, and he wrote forwards for a couple of mine, including one for Terry Jenner, who was the old leg spinner who went to jail.
Yep.
And he was out on parole when Rodney Mars said, "Come and meet this young Warne. I think you'll like him." And Shane Warne looked him in the eye and gave him the big Teddy Whitten handshake.
Yep.
And immediately they had this bond.
Yep.
Come down to the back of nets, son, and see what you can do. And he bowled him this leg break, and it veered, and it hummed, and it fizzed, and it hit him in the hand. And wow, the imprint. Must have hit a rock, son. Try another. Threw the ball back to Shane, who was in his street clothes, bowled an even bigger leg break. Think we might have something here. 708 Test wickets later.
I'm glad you mentioned that that was his great
Huge strength.
his great integrity of Shane, that if you shook his hand, he almost looked through the back of your head. He was so interested in meeting you, whether he put it on, he didn't put it on, but he shook your hand and looked you in the eye.
It was so genuine, Shane.
He was absolutely. I shouldn't have said. Of course, he wouldn't have put it on. But he would have met a lot of people that pestered him for autographs. But he actually grabbed people and looked them in the eye when they shook his hand, which is the great sign of being sincere and ethical.
Yeah. One of the books I did an ABC of Australian cricket, and I didn't realise that there's a fella, and Jason Warne at the celebration, the MCG, 40,000 there, talked about a kid called David Beck, and I never heard about him. So Shane was mucking around age 12, age 13 at Half Moon Bay on the pier, lots of wood everywhere, threw himself off the pier and literally knocked himself out. And I had no idea about this. And literally there's Shane Warne, 13 years old, floating at Half Moon on the water, shallow water, but he was within 30 seconds of...
Face down.
Yeah, face down. And so this kid, David Beck, jumped off the pier and saved him, brought him to shore. And so I put those sorts of really interesting, irresistible moments in a man's story.
Could have changed history.
Yeah.
There and then.
Well, this is what Jason Warne said. None of us would be here unless it was for David Beck.
So who's the most intriguing, for whatever reason, person that you've met and written a book about? Intriguing, that you didn't know much about, and just fascinated you by the more you looked into their life.
Yeah.
Have you written a book on? Wait for this. Have you written books on women?
No women. No, I haven't. Not for any particular reason.
No.
Cess Pepper, the old cricketer, didn't play for Australia, and I wrote a book called Pep, the best cricketer never to play for Australia. He had 3 wives. He had 3 kids, only one in wedlock. He was in a threesome with the youngest, with the youngest of the wives. This is after the war, and the kid grew up idolising Cess, going to all the cricket. He became the first professional immediately after the war. He was making a lot of money, £500, which was worth. You could do a little double fronter at South Yarra for the money he was making a year. The kid ended up going to jail. He was pretty complicated. But I knew none of this when I started this biography. But the first son wrote to me and said, "We rang up Cess, would you like to meet your grandchildren?" And Cess thought that he was wanting money, and so he said, "Out of the question, no way," and just hung up the phone. And so this Hugh Lake, the first kid, helped me to get in touch with all of the members of the family. So it was a book, Sam, that just kept on growing legs, and you suddenly had this amazing information that had never been written before. That's the key, to write stuff and to talk to somebody and to be able to have the ability to cajole, to help. In the end, they just tell your life story. You just sit back. It's a great conversation.
I'm fascinated why you haven't written a book on a woman.
No particular reason.
I don't. I'm not suggesting there is, but
I think Meg Lanning would be a good subject. She's had her own health problems and mental problems of late. Hasn't always played. I like men.
Never got around to it.
I like men's locker rooms. I like going to at Beaumaris, my old footy club, years ago. Won a best and first. We won a premiership. And I took on Eddie Mealy in the ruck.
Yes, I played against.
That's right. He was 36 and I was 21 years old. And in the end, he ran out of gas. And at the very last throw-in, the very last centre bounce, I managed to get a knockout to David Nicholson and hit Peter Linton, the full forward, who kicked his 7th, and we won the game. Still the greatest moment. So if I go and see the Sharks play, the old Beaumaris Sharks, I'll go in the room. I want to smell the liniment and so on. I like Tony Lockett, the same guy. I helped Miss Vicky get a job at Dermot Brereton's hairdresser, Peter, in Frankston years ago. And from then on, Plugger and I would just like peas in a pod. He would do anything for me, but for every other journalist around, including Eddie Maguire, when he threw the spears,
right.
He hated him. And the young guys would walk up to him, piss off, fuck off. He'd see me, I'd keep my distance. He'd nod, and he'd come over when he was ready. And so we wrote a couple of books together, Plugger and I. I went up to the Bradman. They've got a big hall of fame for Bradman Museum, and I was a guest speaker for a Bradman birthday one year.
That's not at Barrel, is it?
It is a Barrel.
It is a Barrel because he wasn't born in Barrel, was he? He was born in
Cootamundra, just nearby. Exactly that. And I rang Plugger, and he said, I'm looking after my cows and the bloke next door cows. Today's just the day I can't do it. And so he couldn't come. But he really, we're still mates now. Still amazing, which is, and this is the thing about sports, Sam, we forget the performances, unless it's a premiership, but we see someone and then the stories can't start flowing.
So besides cricket, you've done them on AFL or VFL or footballers?
Yeah.
Any other sports?
No, I've ghosted with Terry Jenner, with Max Walker, Brad Hodge. I just do the ones that I like. Cricket, I love cricket. I love footy. As Petty Donald isn't here because...
Now, so let me tell you about Don. So this could be the last podcast we ever do. Don is, I'm telling you this now, that's been going on for 2 years. He has ripped the head off the microphone. I don't care speaking behind his back because I'll tell him I said this. He's ripped the head off the microphone. He's broken the earphones earlier today. He eats. I've told him, it's not for me, people, it's infuriating. And talk about the big, strong Leviathan from Hawthorn when I shout at him. He got his tail between his legs. He's wimped out to his car and he's gone. Maybe he could have come back and said, shut the fuck up. What are you talking to? But no, he's cracked the shits. He's gone home, he has.
So this is 1975. And I'm a young journalist at the age, and I'm down at Crib Point at Hawthorn's camp, their pre-season camp, nervous as hell, because I'd barrack for Hawthorn all the way through, and I'd see Hutto play. Hutto was my hero, and there was one famous day there where they're playing St Kilda, the second quarter, and very close game, and Hutto didn't chase. John Kennedy said to his runner, Normie, go and tell Peter that unless he chases, he's coming straight off the ground. And Jack McLeod, the chairman of selectors, tapped John Kennedy on the shoulder and said, John, Hutto's kicked 5. Has he? Jeez, Normie, tell him to do whatever he's doing, keep it going. and so I was, I'd go and see Hawthorn players as a young bloke in between playing footy. And so the Hawthorn blokes were my heroes, Parkin and Don Scott and Hutto in particular. But I went down to cover at Crib Point, their pre-season camp or whatever, and Don was one guy that came over and said, I'm Don Scott, and I could hardly talk. I was that nervous, and he was terrific. So Okay, he's had a little bit of a moment today, but I'm sure that he's going to be back. He will be back, Sam.
I had a moment. I tell you, I just cannot tell you how.
Well, you wouldn't give him 3 votes for today. Maybe just one vote
Jesus,
for today.
he does it every time.
What about my favourite? Can I tell you my favourite warning story?
Yes.
Can I tell you my favourite warning story? One of them. So Dean Jones, they're on 3AW. Dean's doing, and literally St Kilda are going to play Melbourne in a club game, and it's going to be Warne versus Jones. Very rarely would that happen. And Dean gets on 3AW, Neil Mitchell show mid-morning and says, Warnie, I know we're taking you on. I'm going to hit you for the biggest 6 into the Albert Park Lake. And of course, Dino comes in at number 3 for Melbourne. Warnie's bowling, but instead of bowling at the city end, the Albert Park Lake end, he's bowling from the Fitzroy Street end, so from Topolino's.
Bit hard to hit it into the lake.
Exactly. And Jason Jacoby, the wicketkeeper, says, gee, it's going to be pretty hard even for you, Dino, to knock him into the lake from here. Jacko, he said, if anyone can do it, Dean Jones can do it. Really nice.
So I was going to say who's next. Who would you like to, who do you have on the radar? How do you decide? There's a multitude of cricketers and a multitude of sports people. Mind you, you only stick to football and cricket. There must be some golfers. What about? I suppose it's all been done though. Greg Norman's been done. Yeah.
No, I like knowing stuff or learning new material. So, for example, I was reading overnight, there was a cricketer called Chris Lewis that played a lot of games. Yes. He was a mini junior Ian Botham. He stuck cocaine into 3 basically jam jars, put him into his luggage, and he wondered why he got caught at Heathrow, which is the most horrible airport, sorry if anyone's listening to Heathrow, in the whole world. The security is huge there. Yeah. And he got put into jail for 12 years. I think he served 6 or 7.
Well, like just personal use, or
yeah, personal use. It was enough to kill a lot of kids. So I'm just thinking, do I do the cricket jailbirds? There was another guy called Roy Gilchrist, a West Indian, that came from nowhere, and he was a horrible piece of work, Sam. Horrible piece of work. He not only tried to burn down his missus's house after the missus had walked out. He actually got a hot iron to her and branded her face. Yeah, no. So he was a mongrel, but he could bowl fast. And he got banned from Test cricket. If he hadn't got banned a year before the 1960-61 tour, which was the greatest tour of the time, Frank Worrell's West Indians, the Calypsos, he would have been part of it. And they literally tried to get him there in mid-series to bowl bouncers at Normie O'Neill, Simpson and Laurie, these guys. So I'm intrigued by the stories, how these guys run off the rails. So maybe that'll be just a self-interest one.
I should know if you've done this, but I don't. Ken, Harold Larwood, that era, have you written a book on Larwood? Or
no, I haven't. But
it'd be hard to probably research that.
Fresh stuff, because so many, all his mates are gone now.
Yeah, that's right.
So this is the key to it all, Sam. Like when you start a book, if you start a biography of Gary Ablett, you'll talk to the oldest people that you possibly can. Yep. You'll talk to Greg Nichols, who was running the Myrtleford Hotel, and there's a young 23-year-old Gary Ablett, sacked by Hawthorn, walks in with a kit bag over his shoulder and said, my uncle said that I might be able to get a game of footy with you. And it's Gary Ablett Sr. And he played out of his skin that year. And Bill McMaster's gone up, and in the semi-final at Bunton Park, Albury, Gary's kicked 5 goals, 5 of the best possible goals. And he came back and saw Bobby Davis and the Geelong boys and said, if we were playing in the grand final at the cricket ground next Saturday, this bloke would be in the centre.
He's probably the most intriguing sports person in Australia, Gary, because he's such a recluse. I know him pretty well. I've spoken to him yesterday and today about an interview he did, and I said, would you come on and speak about the interview we're doing about, he put me on. I said, oh, no, he said, and I respect him. I just don't know why he won't. I don't know what he thinks we're going to ask him, but it was only about the interview that he set up for us, but I couldn't get him to come on, so he's...
what does he do these days, Gary?
I don't know what he does. I don't know what he does.
He sells a deal of memorabilia. But Susan, he rang up and Susan answered the phone on a Friday night. She said, it's Gary Ablett on the phone. Yeah, Gary Ablett. Yeah, okay. Yeah, g'day, Gary. How are you, mate? And
Same with me. He rang me up yesterday, and he said, it's Gary Ablett. I said, yeah, g'day. And he put me onto this person that we interviewed earlier today about.
See, they're sensational. I like to write about the electrifying people. So, Gary calling for a meal, like they're playing Richmond at Geelong and calling for a meal from the social club at 1 o'clock, half an hour before they're meant to go out. And they're going out kicking 7, like he always slaughtered Richmond. That big goal fest, Salmon and Ablett, I think Fish kicked 9 or 10 and Gary kicked 14.
That's right.
Those are the guys that people want to hear about. So I was able to do his unauthorised biography through the eyes of other people, but I kept it as a nice boy's own tale. Gary Linnell did a biography of him and brought in all the drugs and all of the misadventures. I steered clear of that, rightly or wrongly, and it was a very, very good book for it.
Yeah. So that's the conundrum, isn't it? If you're going to write about someone, do you want to know about the highs and the lows and so it's a good call that you make because you don't try and burn people
See, Warner threw a punch at Root at 2 o'clock in this pub. He was on Zambucas, whatever he was on. He was sailing away, and Root had dared come over and said g'day to some of the Australians in the group. And Warner thought he was out of line, and so he just threw this bloody punch at him. Like, how crazy is that? And they wanted him on tour. They had a big game on the Wednesday. This was the Sunday night, I think. A big game on the Wednesday, so they wanted to keep it quiet. But word trickled back to Jollymont, and Jollymont went crazy, like the old AFL with Gill. Sacked him on the spot, sent him to Zimbabwe. But Greg Chappell did the forward for the Bull, and it was an amazingly good forward in that he was the one that discovered him, kept on pressing him. New South Wales wouldn't pick Warner because he was so wild and because he was so exuberant, and he had no idea of the history of the game, and he was burning people all over the place. And Greg Chappell said, okay, if you learn to bat a little bit longer, you're going to be able to play Test cricket as well as the one-day stuff. Yeah?
Yep.
Yeah, he said, yeah. And so to have a mentor like that, one of the champions of the game, like Greg's a hero for me, like Polly Farmer is for you.
Yep.
And Chappell wrote 5 of the best pages of intro forward. I was so blessed, and I sent him a copy. I said, thank you, you really helped make the book.
So I should know this, but did Root and Warner make up, or are they still a bit like Ian Chappell and Ian Botham? I've never seen two people. At least I think Ian Botham tried to extend the olive branch,
sure
but
did.
Ian wouldn't have a bar of it. Which
I reckon Ian should have stood
pretty
back.
Strong rivalries.
Yeah.
How we go here with Don and I, a pretty strong rivalry there. I think probably if we would extend the olive branch, I'm staggered that Ian Chappell wouldn't. He was so belligerently determined not to do that, which seemed amazing for top sportsmen.
Botham is a sensational bloke, and we had him at our annual dinner guest 27th of December, and this was during COVID, and the Channel 7 commentators this very day weren't allowed to go to the cricket because of COVID scare. A cameraman had contracted COVID. And so they finally are allowed to come to the cricket ground at 4 o'clock. I'm in the press box really worried because our function at 7. Both of them said, Ken, I won't let you down, but you'll have to have me come in a back entrance, sit me well away from anybody else. So we sent him way outside at Kooyong. He came in the tennis courts entrance, where all the lawn tennis courts are, and he did the best 40 or 50 minutes, including a question and answer.
Yep.
Winked at me and said, "I got to go now, mate." And anyway, but he was sensational, and he does a lot of sporties. And people who haven't heard Ian Botham, do yourself a favour because he's fantastic.
Well, you're well respected, Ken, and rightly so. So did you tell me that Root and Warner had made up, or only semi, yeah. Only semi.
The Englishman.
That's like being half pregnant, mate. You either make up or you don't.
Okay, they haven't made up, and the same with Broad, Stuart Broad and Warner, because they were very suspicious of him, and they still are now. Yeah,
well, Ken, it's I don't know. I think I might have alluded to this indirectly, but. Who would you like? I suppose you can do it on anyone, can't you? But who would you like to have a crack at next? Or is that just something that you think at some stage.
Yeah, is it spur of the moment, Sammy?
No, spur of the moment.
It is.
Because different personalities arise and come and go, and you think, well, there's an interesting character.
Like if you could get into the Nick Kyrgios camp, for example.
Absolutely.
Like just and really be one of his buddies and so on. And with Warner, while I wasn't to be directly in his camp, by talking to all of his buddies, we've made a fantastic book. Same with Gary Ablett. Like I went down and talking to Malcolm Blight about the grand final and the 9 goals, 89 and so on. And Malcolm sort of stopped and paused and he said, what about the 5 that Langford started coming back the other way? Hadn't thought of that.
No, so, that's right.
Yeah, because he didn't chase. He didn't chase.
That's right.
Yeah. So
well,
it's fascinating talking to the stars, Sam. So I wasn't good enough to play footy or cricket at the very highest level, but we've had a lot of fun along the way.
Well, who have we got out here this summer? We've got India, Pakistan, and
the West Indies.
Yep. So who
Pakistan
do you like
first.
Out of them,
don't like any of them. Australia will win 5-0.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Like to hear.
Oh yeah, but then they go to India, and then it'll be a new ball game.
Yep.
Well, Ken Piesse, thank you for coming in and speaking to 2 of us. Anyhow, I probably saw the 3rd member off, or he saw himself off. That'll be an interesting conversation when we wind up here. The new book out, David Warner, The Bull, Daring to be Different, by Ken Piesse, forward by Greg Chappell.
Yep.
You're a star, Kenny. You're well respected, and I've known you for a long time. So thanks very much for coming in and speaking to us on You Cannot Be Serious.
You can get it everywhere, Sammy.
Tell us where you can get it.
Or you can get a hardback, cricketbooks.com.au. My website, a specially signed hardback, cricketbooks.com.au.
Fantastic. Righto, what have I done? I haven't turned the sound on.